Allen & Company wishes OOIDA and all members a safe, healthy, and joyous holiday season.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
Today on our program, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to run a single interview. Jimmy Mack works for RadioNemo, which produces the Dave Nemo Show. He follows in the footsteps of legends of trucking radio, including, of course, Dave Nemo himself, who's been in trucking radio for more than 50 years. Now that Dave Nemo is in his version of a farewell tour, Jimmy is one of the people who's ready to carry forward that tradition. Today, we'll bring you an interview with Mack by Landline Magazine managing editor Jami Jones. Here's Jami now.
I thought we could take some time and just really kind of tell the story of Jimmy Mack and how you got to do what you're doing now and all of that. So
a complete fix. It's total nepotism, by the way. I married the boss's daughter. I'm not even kidding about that. I didn't marry the boss's daughter and then get the job. I actually have been a journalist. I've done work in law enforcement. I have worked in journalism. I have worked in podcasting. I have worked in entertainment. Dave Nemo had seen some of my work before, had read some of my columns and articles. And by a fortuitous accident, we lost somebody on the air. No death or anything. Somebody just simply was no longer working there.
Right.
And he called me one weekend and he said, look, you got about 5 minutes to decide. Can you get out to Ocean Springs and go host with my daughter? So I got in the car and I drove over to Ocean Springs, Mississippi. And the funniest thing was I didn't know what the callers would be like. So I blew through like 10 phone calls that called me to tell me congratulations for what I wasn't sure, but just welcome. And I was like, okay, well, who's next? And then I realized there's nobody left calling because I'd gotten through them so quickly. And then I had to kind of fill up space and talk. And it was only supposed to be a kind of temporary thing. And then after about 3 or 4 weeks, they kind of kept me on after that. But the funniest part of the story was the way I ended up hosting the Dave Nemo Show, because I originally was just doing the Saturday and Sunday show. I was doing the weekend show, the Dave Nemo Weekend Show, which is the lifestyle show that we do. What happened was one day Dave said, I'm going to have you sit in on Friday and do the show.
Okay.
And I went, is there anything you want to tell me? He goes, no, just check the calendar. You'll figure it out. And anybody that's ever worked with Dave, you can ask almost all of the people, because there's Dave's got a coaching tree just like Marty Schottenheimer. I mean, Casey Phillips was the host of the Weekend 34. Ellen Voya got her start over there. Kevin Rutherford got his start in regards to being regular contributors. A lot of people have made their way through. I think they would consistently tell you, no, just figure it out. There's a sense of, basically. And I think it was on purpose, I'm never quite sure. It's like one of those moments, I remember in Family Guy, you didn't do anything. Oh, didn't I? And there's a sense with Nemo that he throws you in the deep end of the pool. You can ask Casey Phillips the same question. It's like, what am I supposed to do? You'll figure it out. And so I started doing the show. And what happened that got me kind of on their side was it was like in 2019, 2018 maybe. I can't remember what it was. I had to do a week of the Tim Ridley Show. Mm-hmm. Tim had to take a week off, and I kind of sat in there. And I was lucky on the news that there was a big thing going on at the time where we were kind of in a trucking moment. Once every 2 years, there's a trucking moment, unlike COVID, which was a trucking year. And I remember just kind of asking the question that morning, that first Monday when I was doing Tim's show, if somebody's coming into trucking right now and you sat down with them in a diner, what would you tell them the one thing they had to learn?
That's a good question.
And the phone lines lit up. And the number of people, you'll love this, Jami, the number of people who called and said, learn how to read a map.
Oh, 100%.
Over and over again. And we really got into the weeds with some. I was ready for some more sophisticated stuff about dealing with people and all, and it came down to some real simple basics. But I don't mean like people saying, buy a map and then hanging up the phone. Ended up having a really great week's worth of conversation. And after that, the resistance, and look, here's the thing. We work in an industry where people don't like change.
Oh, 100, not at all.
if you're going to disrupt somebody's productivity, predictability, And that's the good way to kind of phrase it. People have what I call it a productivity predictability. I will be productive if what happens next is predictable. And the more I can ensure that, even if it comes down to what I turn on the radio on a daily basis, anything that kind of messes with that chi, it's almost like baseball players. Like don't talk to the guy with the perfect game.
Oh,
you know that one?
Leave him alone.
Leave him alone.
Do not talk about the no-hitter. Yeah.
Don't talk about the no-hitter. By the way, there's a great story about that where nobody would look at David Cohn in the 6th inning of his perfect game at Yankee Stadium. He didn't realize what he said. Why isn't anybody looking at me? Shut up, dude. Don't talk to me either. I don't want to say anything to you. And I think a lot of these drivers, when you mess with their chi, they get a little bit like, where's the guy I liked? What happened to the guy I liked? We've dealt with that on a couple of occasions. Where is the guy that I liked? Why are you changing things? And that week made a big difference because I think one of the real keys to the job that you do, that I do, is that I think a lot of people forget to listen. I think a lot of people forget to listen. And I think one of the biggest mistakes I always tell people who want to do this, I said, look, dude, there's a lot of people that can talk. And you and I, you know this, we could write copy for days. I mean, if you told us that we wouldn't get a single phone call, nor could we play music, but you gave us a week to get ready.
We could still do it.
We could do it.
Yeah.
We could do it. But the problem is, at the end of the day, you're not really listening to anybody at that point. And the thing about live radio, podcasting's a different animal. Because the thing about live radio is that there's an intimacy there. That even in podcasting is not. There's a sense that the parasocial relationship in radio can break down in a positive way. You can actually call and make contact. So I'll give you an example. So we do a weekend show. Weekend 34 is my gag name for it. It's Dave Nemo Weekends. And one of the things that's been really fun for me is over the month of Halloween, over the month of October, we bring in a lot of horror podcasters, people who talk about spooky stuff, people who do fictional podcasting shows that are about spooky stuff. And and we have regulars now that come on and contribute. There are these two guys who started a podcast, Jami, where it was just them talking about one author and just two guys who wanted to kind of kill time while they figured out what they're going to do the rest of their life. They're now on episode like 1,000.
Oh, my word.
They now count Patton Oswalt as a regular listener and contributor to the show, Chris Sarandon as a contributor and regular listener to the show, a lot of famous people. They've just kind of gotten swept along in it. Well, before they got big, I had become a fan of theirs. They got me through the pandemic to some degree. And when I brought them on the show, the first time I was talking to them, I suddenly started giggling and like, why? I said, I feel a sense of deja vu. I've never spoken to you, but it's these two guys always talking. And nobody ever gets access to them because as much as it seems parasocial, there's no way to access people. Radio, they can find out who you are.
Oh, yeah.
They can talk to you. As a matter of fact, how many times have you spoken to somebody on the radio? Here we are right now. And you don't get a chance to either see them a lot or you never see them. And there's that sense of oddness when you talk to somebody for 4 years and then you finally lay down.
Finally meet
them. Now,
them.
Sometimes the reaction is, oh, I'm sorry, I met you. And sometimes the reaction is all of the women at Matt's when they all met Andre Thibodeau.
Well, it's Andre.
You ever seen that human being?
Yeah.
I mean, I know you have. I mean, it's like, well, you should have said after the first time after the pandemic ended and we all went to Matt's because, Dre doesn't get a chance to get away. We said, you know what, dude, we're going to bring Dre. We'll have somebody work for him. He's got to go on one of these trips. The number of people who had never seen him who were like, that's a handsome dude. You know what Lindsay calls him? She calls him Sexy Jesus.
Oh, my word, Lindsay.
That was Landline Magazine managing editor Jamie Jones talking with Jimmy Mack, one of the on-air hosts with the Dave Nemo Show on Sirius XM Satellite Radio's Road Dog channel. After a short break, we'll have more of Jamie's conversation with Jimmy Mack. That includes a discussion of what the Dave Nemo Show has been doing this year. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Running on ultra-low sulfur diesel? Stay protected this winter with Howe's Diesel Treat and Diesel Lifeline. Steer clear of gel and ice with North America's #1 trusted brand. Find Howe's products nationwide at select retailers, auto parts stores, truck stops, and on Amazon.com.
When it's time to overhaul your truck engine, help protect it by insisting on a genuine Vibratech TVD crankshaft damper. Heavy duty, absolute premium quality, and they're made right here in the USA. Find a dealer at VibratechTVD.com.
Truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need Truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide.
Truck revived. Deliveries thrive.
Truckdown.com.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
Landline Now, welcome back. Before the break, we were listening to the interview by Landline Magazine managing editor Jamie Jones with Jimmy Mack, an on-air host with the Dave Nemo Show. That included a discussion of how Jimmy Mack ended up as an on-air host with the show, his background, the resistance truckers have to change, and how it plays into what goes on the air, the advantages of live radio versus podcasts or other broadcasts, and more. We now continue that conversation in progress.
So this is actually this is a very big year for the Nemo Show, because this is the farewell tour, if you will.
Oh, yeah. Oh, as Dave calls it, the vital retirement. The joke I make about, we have a nickname for him, and by the way, this comes from a place of love and also from a place of brilliance. We call him Sneaky Dave because he is a great story. It happened over at the ATA's MCE at the MCC in Nashville, Tennessee. So we had a guest on, and Dave was nowhere near the booth. And we're on like in 15 seconds. He hasn't shaken hands with this guest. He hasn't laid eyes on this guest. And I'm fine with it, but he's like, where is Dave? He sits down, slips his headsets on, smiles, and then introduces the guest, name perfection, and understands completely what he does. And the joke we always make about Dave is that he is the Phil Mickelson, Arnold Palmer of radio hosts. Mm-hmm. The joy is watching him bury the ball in the rough and then somehow brilliantly getting the ball back on the green somehow and either making par or even miraculously sometimes a birdie. So he, after 55 years of this, he has a great line. He says, I want to be able to do what I want to do when I want to do it. Mm-hmm. But he still wants to have a lot of fun because he enjoys what he does. If he didn't, he'd already be done. He really, really loves doing it. So he and I have been spending the last couple of months and will continue to work over the next couple of months figuring out how, it's a great, where the Dave Ramsey Show became the Ramsey Show, to figure out a way to make it the Nemo Show, where he is still a present, vital, active participant in the events, but that he and Cheryl, who have been married forever, 50-plus years, they're both in great health. I mean, Dave's got a gun show. Oh, yeah. I mean, Dave's ripped. So I'm not kidding, guys. I'm not making a joke here for Jamie. If you've ever seen him, it's like, wait a minute, dude, how's the old guy in such good shape? They're in good shape. They want to go places and do things.
As you should.
As you should. And not just always have it be about going to trucking venues, which is terrific. He loves all that stuff. But they have places they want to go. There's overseas stuff they want to do. This is the first time, for all the places Dave has been, he'd never gone to Maine until this year.
You think about people like Dave Nemo, and we've talked about this before because I know I've been blessed with some tremendous mentors in this trucking journalism space. Sandy Sonker, Paul Abelson, all these people. And when you have somebody like Dave Nemo who has not only helped you launch a career in this trucking journalism space, but the wealth of knowledge. And, he is walking history right now.
Well, his musical knowledge is insane. And his musical knowledge is not only historical, it is contemporary. Mm-hmm. That he can walk into a room, hear stuff. Man, we walked in the room one time when Don and I were working on something. He goes, oh, that's The Weeknd. I kind of dig them. And it's just like, how do you know all this information? What he really taught me that's really cool is that he taught me, people get so nervous, and I've worked with people like this, and I listen to it on the channel all the time. You are not guilty of this, by the way. You're not. And it's just one of these things where I got to talk immediately. You stop talking, it's my turn to talk. People will talk, make a great point, and Dave will go, interesting. Mm-hmm. He'll let the point land. He actually knows how to create negative space while talking to people to allow the listener entrance. Because that's the big thing that I was kind of getting at earlier, the idea that forget about the parasocial relationship. The idea is, where does the listener reside, both in a podcast and, more importantly, for what we're talking about, on a radio show. And I once heard the best definition of an audience I've ever heard. This guy told me once, he goes, I can keep this really simple. He said, the audience is what happens. He said, the show's the same. It's the audience that changes and shapes and moves and drives it. So even without the call-ins, that it's our responsibility to remember that there's always somebody listening and to figure out who it is we're talking to. And I think Dave, in that pause, reminds us that there's a space for us to exist within the course of that show.
I think the art of the interview is lost by a lot of people because they're just jumping for the soundbite. They don't have the conversation. And silence has its place.
It does.
In a conversation. It can be used as a power move to make somebody feel incredibly uncomfortable. It can also be used in a moment where it's emotional, and just let that set for a minute where everybody feels that. And I think that that's what the gift that we are able to do, and that we've learned from people like Dave Nemo, is to make sure that we do keep the fact that these are people that we're talking to, that these are people who mean a lot to our careers, and it's important that we hear what they're saying and understand it. Because if we don't, then we won't effectively do our jobs as journalists.
Yeah, and it's something really cool. I'm working on a piece right now. I've just because I like to have a little bit of fun and keep my brain sharp, I've started a Substack, which is kind of an analysis of how people tell scary stories by either podcasting or on the radio. And I kind of I'm working on the piece right now about War of the Worlds, Orson Welles' infamous broadcast where they convinced everybody that Grover's Mills was being invaded by Martians. Although most people thought it was Nazis, to be honest with you, if you find out what happens. There's a moment where the microphone goes dead, where the ray beam, he's like, it's 30 yards to my right. I went back and listened to the sequence. It's 6 seconds of silence before they say, we're experiencing technical difficulties at Grover's Mill, New Jersey. We'll return to the broadcast as soon as possible. In the meantime, here's Raymond Riccello and his orchestra with Stardust. And then you get that creepy, which would be normally not creepy music. And I realized something, that the 6 seconds is the amount of silence before an audience thinks something is wrong.
Oh, wow.
And I realized that too. And can we do it? Actually, let's just do it. I mean, so
let it hit for 6 seconds. Here we go.
That's it.
Yeah, it starts feeling a little uncomfortable.
It's right at 5 and 6 where it begins to feel uncomfortable. And it's a great value lesson to kind of go what we're just talking about, this desperate need, the cacophony need to fill up sound. We were talking about this earlier, that there are a lot of men and women out there these days, and my heart breaks for them, who feel like they've never been heard.
Yes. There's so many.
There's so many, and what happens is it means they stop reading rooms. So they'll go into a room where there are 15 or 20 people, and everybody's kind of talking and just kind of shooting the breeze, and they get a chance to talk. And they speak, and if they would just stop at that moment, they'd be fine. But I really feel like for the first time in their life, they realize that 15, 20 people are looking at them, and they keep going. And often they kind of reveal stuff about themselves that maybe is uncomfortable, but it's finally their chance to speak. I feel like what radio does, because you actually have someone who is there to say, it's been good talking to you. You know what I'm saying? That's where Dave really comes in, because there's some people, I think they're exploitative, who bring on the crazies, the zanies, the maniacs, and let them keep going because it's good for ratings. But I think what Dave does, so we're getting back to Dave. I don't lose the thread. But you've talked with me. We walk out into right field and somehow make our way back to home plate. I think what Dave does is he actually has he's always told me that there's some people who talk to the lowest common denominator. Dave always wants to imagine that everyone listening to him is smarter than he is. And in doing that, he plays to the better angels of people's nature. So there's a sense of, I'm not going to let you go there. And I'm not going to let you go there in a way that doesn't make people think I'm stopping you from going there. I'm just simply redirecting you. And I think it's a responsibility, particularly in the political climate we live in and the fact that there are so many other places for people to have that kind of experience on the radio, there is a place where cooler heads can prevail and the temperature actually can be brought down to the medium cool that is Dave Nemo's voice.
Yeah.
Something kind of extraordinary about that.
Well, let's kind of get specific about trucking. I'll do it if you'll do it. Okay.
I'll go. Let's go.
All right. So in the early days of your radio trucking journalism, what was the funniest misstep you had because you didn't fully understand trucking?
Oh, God, I have to think about it. It's not a matter of like, well, I don't know. I was kind of pluperfect. No, God almighty, I really think the discussion of the fifth wheel is where I just was like scrambling, trying to kind of figure out what the heck they were talking about. It's like, am I not welcome to this party? Is that what you people are referring to? I don't understand what we're talking about here. And I was very lucky because not only did I have Dave Nemo, I had Tom Bray and Dean Croak early on in the process.
Yeah. Like I said, those mentors save you from yourself a lot.
Let me tell you something. I can't tell you the number of times where it's like, Dave, I don't know, go call Tom Bray. I have no idea. I'm just making this up as I go along either. Oh, I mean, and there were times where, I will tell you this, I didn't have as much of a problem with this job as I've had with previous jobs because of previous embarrassments. I learned, and it was the Tim Ridley show where I basically kind of sneakily on that week got a crash course in trucking. Now, I had some advantages that I was raised in a railroad family, so I do know a little bit about intermodal transport and all that kind of stuff. But there was a job I had earlier where I covered sports. You and I both have that background, where there were some places I was lost because I didn't know where the bodies were buried or the players were, and embarrassed myself because I wasn't willing to say I don't know. I was ready for that on this job.
Yeah.
And the big thing, talk about Dave Nemo saving my tuchus. He said, Jim, they will put up with anything except a phony. If you don't know, you need to tell them you don't know, and it's okay.
You know, that is so funny. That is the first thing I always tell a new reporter when they join the Landline team. You know, the absolute thing you are going to lean on for months, maybe even a year or better, is I'm new here. And if you're honest and authentic with your readers, your listeners, you know, and tell them the truth that you don't understand exactly what they're talking to you about, they will spend all the time in, you know, that you need to understand it. And it is because you're listening and you're
and they want to tell you.
Yes.
They're excited. And somebody's finally listening.
And when you get it to that level and you get it from the people whose lives it's affecting, that makes you such a better advocate for them to tell those stories on down the road. And it's like, the one thing I will say about trucking as opposed to sports journalism, man, truckers have a BS meter that is finely tuned. You will not ever con your way out with a truck driver.
No, you won't. No, you won't. And it's like one of those things too. They will smell it a mile away.
Oh,
they will smell it a mile away. And you know, how they talk to you and the questions they ask you. I had this weird moment. I can say this to you because he's not around. He'll hear it later. So Louis, I'm a NASCAR fan, okay? I'm a NASCAR fan. Well, I talked to Louis long enough to know what was coming, and he asked me, who's your favorite? He goes, who's your favorite NASCAR race driver? And I'm like, I'm in a really awkward position here. Not because I don't know what I'm talking about. I just don't have the heart to tell a Ford man that I'm a big fan of Joe Gibbs.
Oh, no.
I'm just not going to do it. Because I'm a big fan of Joe Gibbs. And I'm a big fan of his approach to everything. I've admired him for a long time, but I'm sitting there going, I am not going to tell Louis Pugh. But I had this moment. I said, I really hope he doesn't think that I'm actually faking my way and pretending to like NASCAR. I just don't want to tell him that the NASCAR that I like, he's not going to be appreciative of. But there is something about that. The idea that Louis got a great BS meter.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a monstrous one, actually, as a matter of fact.
Todd Spencer does, too. I mean,
well,
the leadership around here, no, you're not going to con your way out of anything. I can promise you that.
That was Landline Magazine managing editor Jamie Jones talking with Jimmy Mack, one of the on-air hosts with the Dave Nemo Show on Sirius XM Satellite Radio's Road Dog channel. For those just joining us, we're doing something different on the program today by dedicating the entire show to a single interview. We'll be back after a short break with more of that conversation, including a discussion about what can happen when you compare experiences as a non-trucker with truck drivers, the difference between journalists and general broadcasters, the importance of facts and what you put in print or on the air, the effect of the internet on content, and more. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At Truck Stop, we've built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truck Stop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
Landline Now. Welcome back. Before the break, we were listening to the interview by Landline Magazine managing editor Jamie Jones with Jimmy Mack, an on-air host with the Dave Nemo Show. Our last segment included a discussion of what the Dave Nemo Show has been doing this year, Nemo's plans for his retirement, what some of the unique knowledge and skills Nemo has brought to the job, and more. We now continue that conversation in progress.
I think my most embarrassing one,
Which I've been waiting for. I've been prodding you on, but I've been waiting to hear this.
well, and it was just a rookie mistake. And unfortunately, I was working at the Trucker. I enjoyed the job. But unfortunately, my column was on the front page of the newspaper. So not only did I make a mistake.
I'm already hurting for you. I don't even know where we're going, and I'm hurting for you.
It was the first time that I was covering trucking. And I thought, boy, I can really empathize with truck drivers because fuel prices had just gone nuts. And
I know where you're going.
I had a 42-gallon tank on my Suburban and thought that really meant something, that when I was paying over $100 for a tank of gasoline, that I thought that made me, connect. Oh, no. I got lots of phone calls on that one. And I learned pretty quick. And that's when I was like, I'm just going to leave this one to the professional.
Yeah, but it's one of those things. But this is what's so much fun. And it's why we have on our show the reporters, which you have always been so gracious to kind of be a part of that. Because I'm always trying to explain to our listeners what it is you do. Look, I will tell people I have a background in journalism and I understand about verifying sources. I would never go on the air and violate the tenets of journalism for the sake of the benefit of the listener. And that's the deal you make. I am not a journalist. You, in fact, are. But it's important. One of my jobs, I feel like, is to kind of explain to them what we do. Mm-hmm. Because I feel like the difference between an article that caters to a particular audience and an article that is just absolutely full of dookus. Mm-hmm. And they need to understand the difference. And one of my favorite lines I ever heard from my dad was, he goes, "Look, pal, you're entitled to your opinion. You are not entitled to your own facts." And that's a lot of things I think we're wrestling with these days. And it's so important for what we do. It's okay to say, I don't know. It's okay to retract. It's okay to screw things up. What's not okay is to continue to assert things just because they make your listeners or because they make your readers feel good about their priors. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I think it's a battle that we're having in journalism in particular right now because there is such a distrust overall in media. And I think a lot of it's, self-inflicted harm because of 24/7 news cycles and
working the refs. And I will say this, though, that the refs have been worked. A lot of people are not willing to kind of say, nope, you're wrong. Mm-hmm. You know you're wrong, and you continue to lie. And it's got to stop. Yeah,
the infotainment realm. So I think when you can stop for a minute and say, look, we have these, journalistic tenets that we stick to. We are going to be nonpartisan because that's what benefits truck drivers in the end because parties will come in and out of power. We've seen it over time. So nonpartisan's the place to be. It's all those things that you have to stay true to and make sure that the news and the facts you're delivering hit that mark. And too many others in the mainstream don't do it. It's just whatever's going to get the click, whatever's going to get
You want to hear my pet peeve? And I'm going to put it in the most fancy pants way I can. I think when you put it in a fancy pants way, it actually becomes clear. It's like my old joke I make on the radio all the time. I said you should look at things from their most sort of intellectual or strange way. I tell people all the time, the best definition of the federal government I ever heard is that it's an insurance company with an army.
Oh my God. Well, it's not wrong.
I mean, that's not wrong. And the idea that, what is Southwest Airlines? It's Greyhound with wings. I mean, when you think about it the way that it actually is, one of the biggest problems I have right now with infotainment is I tell people that there is content and there is form. Mm-hmm. Now, often, great content fails to break through because it fails to wrap itself up in the proper noise of form. You follow me?
Yeah.
The problem is that there are a lot of people, some of whom I have worked with in the past, some of whom I hope not to work with in the future, who confuse the two, who are very well set up for clicks, very well set up for likes, very well set up for publicizing themselves. The journalist becomes the story, the host becomes the story. God bless them. But part of me sits there and is like, when faced with your business model relying on clicks, do you in fact start telling half-truths in order to maintain your audience? And somebody once asked me, why do you think there have been no landslides politically in regards to national politics? Mm-hmm. And I think part of it is the fact that, and this is a plague on both your houses, why there's been no, I guess the closest we've come has been the 2008 election, but even that, by historical standards, was close. A genuine bona fide butt whooping. Why haven't we had one? It's because people have places where they can go confirm their priors. You see, in 72, when everything unravels for Nixon, every place you go to says things are unraveling for Nixon and he's a crook. Yeah. There is no channel that you can go to that can tell you, oh, no, they're wrong, they're liars. Yeah. No, what you believe, what you want to feel in your heart, you can believe. And that applies to both sides, that we can always race someplace where our priors exist to make us feel better about the way we want to feel as opposed to what we want to know. And I've always made a point, if you're watching the news for good news, you're not watching the news. Because good news happens all the time. Mm-hmm.
You can find it. You can find it if you look for it.
Good news happens all the time, though, man. It's like, are you proud of your grandchildren? Yes. Then that's good news. Mm. Did you make money today? That's good news. Did you wake up this morning? And it goes back to trucking, too, right? Because the idea that it's like, do you know why nobody tells you what a great day truckers had? Because it happens all the time. We only hear about the trucking accident because it's a rare thing. When we stop hearing about trucking accidents, that's going to be bad because it means it's happening all the time, everywhere. And I get really worried that people aren't going to different places, that they're going to places that make them feel good about the way the world is, even if feeling good means hating the world.
Yeah, confirmation bias.
Confirmation bias.
It's a bad thing.
I need to do my own research until I find the stuff that I agree with.
Yeah, that's exactly what that is. We touched on Dave and his farewell tour. Those are some big shoes to fill, my friend.
I'm not filling them. I'm gonna put some cement galoshes on Casey Phillips and just kind of drop him into the bottom of the lake. Pontchartrain. He can have it. I don't know what the future holds other than I really enjoy this job. Mm-hmm. That's what I tell people. I don't know, and I don't know if Dave's model is really a model that can work for anybody else anymore. I don't know if, and this is with deep respect for a lot of our friends on the radio right now, I don't know if you can do what Dave does anymore in Dave's model. I think that one bloviating blowhole by themselves in the middle of a microphone, if they're in fact hitting you with really kind of incendiary opinions, I think there's still a market for that. And there's some guys who we know who would very much like to be a part of that world. And by the way, God bless them. There's good money in that, and that's real talent, by the way, to be able to kind of extend for 2.5, 3, 4 hours. I mean, we're not talking about an hour here. We're talking about 4 hours of program. I don't think people want to hear that anymore. I think the reason why podcasting's gotten so popular, and if we can learn anything on the radio from podcasting, is people want to feel, and I feel like we do this on my show. I feel like I want people to walk into a diner where there's a lot of really smart, groovy people who know a lot about trucking. Mm-hmm. And they sit in a booth with those really cool cats, and everybody's just kind of shooting the breeze. And so in regards to what happens next, I think the format stays the same, and I think the information stays the same. I mean, it's got to be trucking.
Right.
There's no way around it. And there have been people who've tried, but there's no way around it. At the end of the day, we serve you serve your 100,000 and more. On the air, on the other hand, we serve 1 million plus. We serve a lot of folks out there. And we want to create an environment where they feel like nothing worse than a diner where you don't feel welcomed.
Right.
And so I think part of the game for us moving forward, the next model, maybe I'll sit in the center of it, but I want 2 or 3 people sitting around me. You know what I'm saying? I would like, I would like more voices at the table. And one of the things too, by the way, and I don't feel controversial about this either. We need a little more diversity. We need some people of color. We need some Sikhs.
Oh yeah.
We need some people who are just getting into the action. There are vast groups of people who are not being spoken to and not being given the information they need.
The young dudes, the young men and women entering the industry, the women entering the industry.
And what I'm worried about with the young people and the young women entering the industry is, I'm just, how do I put this and not make anybody aggravated? Well, he's young and he's talking about trucking. And I have no problem with somebody young talking about trucking. Let's go get those guys. What I don't need, though, is like I said, we go back to content and form. And there's a moment where you want to say, you got a little handle on the form here. Now, what are you talking about? Because somebody said, well, after a while, you run out of stuff to talk about. Huh.
No,
we don't. We don't. We actually don't. There is so much. I mean, I got into the weeds with Jay Grimes about what it takes to build parking.
Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot more
to
it than people think.
Too.
Yes.
It's interesting and how much it costs, how much one parking space costs, which is why Jim Park had this bad moment where he said that trucking should pay for parking, and you would have thought now. Don't worry, you're going to feel better about Jim in a second too. He meant the big carriers.
Oh, of course he did.
What he meant was, he said, no. He said, I don't think drivers should pay for parking. He said, but I think these carriers and these fleets have a responsibility to really do more out there on the road to ensure that there's more parking out there. And you could hear this collective relief because people love park. And they're like, what are you doing, Jim? And he's like, oh, wait, no, I meant the carriers. But it's one of those crazy things where, people, I hate the government, but you want to say, dude, you know how much it costs to build a single parking space? Even some of the really Tony carriers with buckets of money. And by the way, there are carriers listening right now going, we don't have buckets of money.
Yeah, you do. I've seen the quarterly reports.
Yeah, you do. I've been at a couple of your dinner parties.
Yeah.
Dave's going, please stop talking to me. No, but you get the idea that it's but the idea of that kind of thing, that parking is one of those issues where our listeners need to understand the government ain't always bad. And if the government shows up and says, we'll build it. You take the win and you go home. You declare victory and you go home is kind of the thing. We just have a lot of responsibility because we are in many ways, I think, the last sane voice that a lot of these people listen to. I'm going to be really blunt about that in regards to the industry. I think there's a lot of people out there who are talking to truckers, and I am not utterly and entirely convinced they're giving them good information.
Well, and
Jami did not say that. I said that. Okay?
Well, and they're up against it too, because having come up through the ranks with a robust mentorship, people that I could go. I mean, I work here at OOIDA headquarters. If I have a question, I can go to an expert in the building immediately. So when you're left on your own to just try and make a name for yourself, this is one of the toughest niche journalism gigs, podcast gigs.
But that's the problem.
Yeah.
That's the problem. You just hit the nail. It's actually one of the toughest, and I can't tell you the number of people who think it's an end run into bigger things. And I told somebody recently, I said, the only way you end run this job into bigger things is if you do it exceptionally well.
That was Landline Magazine managing editor Jamie Jones talking with Jimmy Mack, one of the on-air hosts with the Dave Nemo Show on Sirius XM Satellite Radio's Road Dog channel. For those just joining us, we're doing something different on the program today by dedicating the entire show to a single interview. After a short break, we'll be back with more of that conversation, including a discussion of the difference between entertainment and news and why it's important, what Jimmy did to get himself up to speed once he was on a trucking radio program, what he sees as his responsibility as a radio host, the differences between news and editorial content, and more. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit capitalreman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com, because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Landline Now, welcome back. Before the break, we were listening to the interview by Landline Magazine managing editor Jamie Jones with Jimmy Mack, an on-air host with the Dave Nemo Show. That included a discussion about what can happen when you compare experiences as a non-trucker with truck drivers, the difference between journalists and general broadcasters, the importance of facts and what you put in print or on the air, the effect of the internet on content, and more. We now continue that conversation in progress.
The moment you try to walk out of trucking and start being entertaining or talking about the other stuff, unless you have a music license, good luck. Because they'll go, why am I listening to you when I could be on the channel where the people who actually get paid lots of money to have the same sort of conversation await me, especially on Sirius XM. The trick to doing this job well is to have a massive mastery of the information and the facts. Which, as you asked that original question, I'm telling you, I got the J.J. Keller book. I got the rules and regs. I spent the first 3 months on flashcards.
Oh, yeah.
I would go to the gym with flashcards. And I knew some stuff. I can tell you some stuff about law enforcement on the highway. I can talk about intermodal, in rail yards. I can talk about it. I was like, oh, my God. And then it makes you realize the deep admiration you have for the drivers when you realize all the information they've got to hold on to.
Yeah. We expect so much of truck drivers, and that's why you just hope that you can boil down a regulation so it's super easy for them to understand and know. Because nobody...
I don't do that. I just go on the landline and just steal your copy.
Well, I mean, but nobody wants to carry around that J.J. Keller book and be, it's one of those things there's so much responsibility in that educational aspect of what we do. And it's just to save our listeners, readers, viewers time. You stay at the business of trucking. We'll sort this out for you. And that way we'll do it so you don't have to.
That's the difference between your job and my job, unless there is an actual ongoing emergency like there was at COVID. Unless we have to be on the air to tell people where the bathrooms are open, the idea of ongoing.
Yeah.
You have to actually work in really kind of hard fact-check reality. That's your job. You got to make sure that you actually summarize things in an elegant way that communicates it as clearly as possible and tells them the truth. Not that I don't have those responsibilities. My job is for them to look up after 4 hours and realize that they're that much closer without having realized the time has gone by in the blink of an eye. And I don't make any apologies for that. Now, I need to make sure whatever I say on the air is truthful. I need to make sure whatever I say on the air is factual. But my true responsibility is to keep them awake, alert, alive, so when they look up, they go, wait a minute, 4 hours is gone? Yeah, 4 hours is gone. You're that much closer to being where you have to be.
Yeah.
And it's a fine line, which is why I understand that there are people out there who feel like, well, maybe I can, just have a good time here on the air. You can, but you need to. I'll give you an example. I'm really proud of this. So just did a show recently where it was Frankenstein Friday.
All right.
That's a real thing. Look it up. It's the Friday before Halloween, and they celebrate
Frankenstein. We wouldn't lie
Frankenstein.
on the air,
so we're not gonna. But it's an absolute thing. But what I did was, and I was really proud of this. I won't even act like I won't humble brag. I was proud of this. I said, well, how do I work this in? And what I did was I said, what is the time that the odds were rigged against you, that you rigged your rig in such a way that you rigged yourself towards success? And I talked about the idea of Frankensteining your truck when you broke down or something went really, really wrong with it. And make it 35 miles to avoid the tow company, to avoid all that kind of stuff, where you actually had to do a Frankenstein and basically get the jumper cables and be like, it's alive, and get it to where it had to go. Phone lines lit up. That's a different conversation than just talking about the fact that it's Frankenstein Day.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of the game we have to play. If you have things that you think are fun to talk about, great. Just make sure they relate to trucking. Just make sure they connect with trucking. That's the difference between what you and I do. At least what you do over at Landline. Because at Landline, man, you got to get those journalism tenets done. I mean, you got to do it. And as much as you know, and by the way, if anybody wants to go back on our SiriusXM app and listen to Jami and I talk, we get into a really great conversation where we distinguish between news and editorial. Remember that conversation?
Yep. News and opinion,
news and opinion ain't the same thing. And you can be completely factual in opinion, but at some point in between the facts is your interpretation and your understanding of them and where you think people should go.
Right.
And that's not the same thing as news. Now, sometimes people make news by giving an opinion, because, after all, celebrity endorsements are the most important endorsements. But most of the time, opinion is exactly that. And that's the toughness of the racket, to be able to distinguish that. And I think we have a responsibility both on the air and in print to help our listeners understand what the difference is.
Yeah, everything should be clearly labeled. It should be clearly announced as such. If you're going off on the opinion bandwagon, you have to honestly let your readers, listeners, and viewers know that. It's just, I think it's critical to our integrity. If we try to mask it any other way, it hurts our integrity. And I think that's really important.
Speaking of your integrity, what do you think is like the grooviest thing that you cover in regards to trucking? I mean, we all have our little passions. There are things that we think are really great. I really like talking about sleep is really important to me. But my big thing is every Friday I do Education Station. I am obsessed with how we train people to drive trucks. I'm obsessed with listening to different CDL schools and trade schools and community colleges talk about what they look for in a teacher of truck driving. What's your thing? What's your bag?
I started out at The Trucker, which is really just an impartial newspaper, and I covered, let's just be honest, the ongoing battle between ATA and OOIDA. The big fleet versus little guy. And it was never something that really spoke to me until I was watching this and directing the content of The Trucker and, making sure that both sides were being represented and everything that you should do. And then when I got the call to come to OOIDA, and join Landline, I was so excited because by then I got it. I got the plight of the little guy, and it was.
Have you been hearing the argument I've been having? I have a regular caller, by the way, who actually thinks that there is a driver shortage and it's terrific. And he and I are talking across from. We're almost there, where he's like, "You're killing me with the whole driver shortage thing. It's how I make my money." And I said. And it's crazy, though. I mean, we go back and forth on it. He called, and he's very, very, very respectful. It gets tight, but it never gets ugly or anything. But it's just amazing to me who buys that narrative and who doesn't. See, I think there is a driver shortage, but I think the driver shortage is one of quality drivers, because I think a lot of quality drivers, having been detained at docks too long, having been lied to by recruiters and brokers, and having been left on the side of the road by carriers, have decided, you know what, I'm going to go join the other 600,000 CDLs in California that are yet unused.
Yeah. Anyway, Jimmy, it's been a pleasure talking
great to
to
see you.
Yeah, I mean, we don't get to spend a lot of time. It's usually at Matt's, and we're just like scrambling to get from one thing to another.
And we get to talk, but I mean, never get to see each other. This is fun.
Yeah.
Anytime.
All right. For Landline Now, I'm Jami Jones.
Once again, that was Landline Magazine Managing Editor Jami Jones talking with Jimmy Mack, one of the on-air hosts with the Dave Nemo Show on SiriusXM Satellite Radio's Road Dog channel. If you want to make your voice heard about any of the issues we discuss on the show, you should call your representative and both of your U.S. senators in Congress. To call any member of Congress, all you have to do is remember one phone number, the U.S. Capitol Switchboard. That number is 202-224-3121. Provide the operator your zip code, and they can connect you directly to the office of any of your members of Congress. Again, that phone number is 202-224-3121. 888-224-3121. You can also make contact with those lawmakers by using the website fightingfortruckers.com. At that website, go to the button that says Contact Your Representatives. Again, that's at fightingfortruckers.com. That's our program for today. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife.
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
Chrome.
And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us!
Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.